much. Let's hear it for our senator, for Senator Sanders, for his leadership in this area. And so good to see all of you this morning. I also happen to be a pastor, so I also believe in protocol. So I thank God for the pastor of this church, Reverend Dr. Victor Hall, and for his leadership here in this community. Can we praise God for him for just a moment? And thank God for him for the leader of this congregation. And I'm so grateful and honored to be here with you all today on this morning. So good to be back here with my friend. As he said, we served in the state legislature for a period of time. See, he was coming in, I think he was the one who ran me out because he came in as a senator. I knew him as a councilman, and then I knew him as a senator, and I think I lasted about 1 year and 1 month with him in the state legislative body, right? But I thank him for his leadership. I chaired the Black Caucus at the time, the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus. And what I know about Senator Sanders, when he was a councilman and we worked together on important community issues, what I know about him when he was a senator and we worked together on important issues, Senator Sanders has one fundamental question. When he's making decisions, when he's working in his district office, when he's working in the Albany office, when he's on the floor of the state Senate, he has one question that he asks himself repeatedly, and that is, how can I best serve the constituents that I represent? And that's something that I've seen that many people lose sight of. And I've seen people that have a message for the community, and they'll say one message from the microphone here, but then when they get to Albany, there's another message. And when they're here in the community, it's no justice, no peace, fight for the people, fight for the community, we're not gonna stand this for anything. And then there's another more modified message when they get to Albany. But Senator Sanders is willing to shake things up. And I appreciate that about him because he wants to make his community a better place. I'm so honored to be here to represent the governor, to represent Governor Andrew Cuomo. And as it was said that I was appointed to this position, I assumed the position on February 20th. I left the State Assembly. I would have served, this November would have made 10 years that I served in the State Assembly. Thank you. Representing parts of Crown Heights, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, and East Flatbush. And one of the reasons when I made the decision, anytime you make a career decision is a very serious decision, particularly when you work somewhere for 10 years. And nowadays, we don't work anywhere for 10 years. We work for a year, 2 years. I mean, remember the days when people worked at one company for all of their professional life and they retired after 20 years, 30 years. Now that doesn't happen that much anymore. So after 10 years, one of the reasons why I made the decision was because as the leader of the caucus, I saw the governor's commitment to many of the issues, all of the issues that impact our community, impact not just communities of color, but urban communities, and impact urban youth. When he announced this office, he also announced in the State of the State many important policy issues that are germane to our community. Even before the State of the State, it's good to see my good friend Pastor Jones here. And when he, 5 years ago, he created a program called Urban Youth Works, now called Urban Jobs Program. And over the past 5 years, it's led to 18,000 disconnected youths between 16 and 24 that have been employed by approximately 2,000 employers. Now, I'm not talking about the individuals that are all the models who have graduated from high school and were straight A students and come from great circumstances. I'm talking about individuals that were considered unemployable. These are the individuals that we call disconnected. I say really that they're not disconnected. At some point, society has been disconnected when we have this large population of young people that are on the streets and did not complete their education. So it's a testament to the governor of this program that led to 18,000 being employed. He also has a program that he's created that has helped individuals that were formerly incarcerated make the transition back to the community. Because as we know, that's another issue that we have to deal with. And fortunately, there's a climate where we can have a reasonable and have a rational conversation about individuals that were formerly incarcerated. Back, my brother knows in his former career and working in the district attorney's office that unfortunately many times we say, how can we punish this individual forever? And we don't realize if we're punishing them, we're punishing ourselves. Because if we don't make sure that when they come out of prison, there's a transition to employment or education, then guess what? They're going to be on the same corner committing the same crimes that led them to prison in the first place. So this is something that the governor takes very seriously and is committed to New York State being a national model and how we deal with the formerly incarcerated. And we know over the past year plus, not even over the past year, over the past several decades, more intensely over the past 12 months or so, we've been dealing with this issue of unarmed individuals being killed by police. It's an issue that is not just a New York State issue, it's an issue that has really shocked the nation and has mobilized people to answer the question, how do we respond to this? And the governor is the first and still the only governor in all of the state, all of the country, who has passed an executive order that would require a special prosecutor for individuals, unarmed individuals that are killed by police officers. And that's very important because, and that's right, yes, you can clap for that. It's very forward thinking, and again, New York State is a model in this important criminal justice issue, because you have to remove the subjectivity from the situation. If you have district attorneys who are working directly with police officers, then your decision making can be compromised. And even the question is not, is their decision making compromised? The question is there an environment where we can even question anyone's decision making being compromised? It shouldn't be that, for a fact it is. But in the criminal justice system, you have to remove even the thought of anyone not making the most objective decisions. And that's something that the governor takes very seriously. But I know you didn't come to hear about that. I know somebody said, we didn't come to hear about the criminal justice system. I know it's important, it's dear to you, and I want to make sure that you know about the significant issues that the governor is working on in New York State. When the governor appointed me to this position, it was a newly created office called the Office of Faith-Based Community Development Services. It's the first time that it has happened here in this state. So I think that, I hope it's not inappropriate, but I think it deserves some applause that we're being forward leaders, and the governor had the vision to create this office. When he was the secretary at HUD, of Housing Urban Development, under President Bill Clinton, he said some of the best work that he did was the work with faith communities. And we know that you can't talk about community development without talking about the faith community. You can't talk about the civil rights movement without talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You can't talk about the farm workers movement without talking about Cesar Chavez and the great work he was inspired to do for the farm workers, and the sanctuary movement in Central America, and movements across the world that started with faith communities. And that's the same thing with community development here in this country. The original pioneers of community development were faith leaders that were inspired by faith to go out and change their communities, whether it was feeding the hungry, or whether it was getting poor people out of poverty, whether it was the settlement houses, whether it was dealing with domestic violence, dealing with homelessness. The pioneers in these movements were people who were inspired by faith to go outside of the religious congregation and say, no, it's not just about the four walls. It's about how are we using whatever our respective faith tradition is to go out and make the world a better place. And that is the basic idea. That's the rationale behind this office. And the governor is saying that I acknowledge the work that faith leaders are doing here in New York State. How you make the world a better place, how you make the state a better place. And it's also an acknowledgement that we have to find a way to let you know about the resources that exist. Because I talk to many astute pastors and rabbis and imams, and some have PhDs, and they're very learned and scholarly. But then when we talk about community development, yes, they're doing the work, but if you ask them, do you know how to access resources, then there's a blank face, because there's a disconnect. You're in the field, and it's understandable because you're in the field and you're doing the work, and you don't have time to come in and take a lunch break and go to the computer and do online research. You're taking care of people, and then the day is over. And then you got to refresh yourself and go back the following day. And I know, do we have any ministers here, any other pastors here? How many people are pastors here? Right, and you know that you're dealing with your congregation. And so to deal with the needs of the congregation, and then you also have to deal with the needs of the community, it's tiring. Isn't it tiring? Are you like me? Is anybody here, it seems like, it used to seem like there were 7 days in a week, but it seemed like there are less days in a week. And it seems like to go from whatever your day of worship is, it seems like maybe they're about a day and a half in between. You finish one Sunday, and it seems like you have all this time in the world to work on your message for the following Sunday, and before you know it, here it is upon you again. That's the challenge of this calling that we're called to, that we're called, we have all this compassion to serve, but then many times we have to pause and say we also have to come up with strategies to serve. Because we have to have the compassion, but we also have the strategies. So I'm here to help with those strategies to serve your community. When the governor created this office and appointed me to this office, he also had a plan. He proposed $50 million in this year's state budget. And fortunately, thank you to Senator Sanders, that passed this year's state budget. I think the Senate deserves a round of applause for that. $50 million is not a little bit of money. I don't know how much you have. There's nobody who would turn away $50 million, right? So $50 million. That $50 million is going to be for capital infrastructure. You have a nonprofit that wants to apply for a grant for technological assistance. You want to improve the technology rather of perhaps a database that's not confidential, and you want to make the records confidential. You want to make a room more energy efficient. You want to make a room or building handicap accessible. Things of that nature. Now, the $50 million, if you're affiliated with a nonprofit who has received a state grant or state payment in the past, then you are eligible for that, for human service organizations. It's going to be through agencies such as the Office of Children and Family Services, through the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, Department of Mental Health, Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, through the Dormitory Authority, and that's being finalized. I'm going to make sure, before I forget, I left the cards in the car. That's why it's always good to have a staff person with you, because the little things, Senator, we forget about, right? They're in the car. I'll make sure as soon as I'm done that I run to the car, I get the cards, I think I have some flyers, so that you have our information. And we're here to serve you. So even if you leave here and you say it's too much information at once, you can make sure you reach out to us. We'll let you know everything you need to know. So there's a $50 million. But in addition to the $50 million, there are about $800 million in grants that are in the final stages of the approval process. So that's $800 million that's already been appointed to organizations, the organization have been approved for, and even millions upon millions of that's under review and waiting for the agency to give the approval, and the state comptroller to give approval, and attorney general to give approval. There's a process in place. So that goes to show you that there's a lot of money, millions upon millions of dollars that agencies give out to nonprofit organizations, and we want to make sure that you're aware of it, because they say information is power, but it's not. Information itself is not power. It's when we utilize information that can lead to the power. So we want to make sure you have the information and that you're in a position to utilize the power. It's not just enough to say, yes, the grants exist, but you want to know, how do we access the grants? And I'll tell you later, I will tell you in my office, I will tell you when you reach out to us about the grants portal. And you can go to our website. If you go to ny.gov/GO for the governor's office, GO faith-based services, then on that site there's a lot of information on the agencies, on the process of applying for a grant. We even have federal information, etc. So the role of this office, the three basic things. One of the roles of this office is what I'm doing now, to communicate the resources that exist. The second thing that we do is we help with capacity building. And by help with capacity building, we don't have the resources to go through and do your articles of incorporation for you for your nonprofit and do your tax filing. No, that's not what we're doing. But we give you the information on how to go about that process. For instance, it's a very important distinction here that I have to let you know. As a religious organization, you cannot receive state grants as an organization or for a program that is reserved for the church. It can't be a program where we say, well, we serve the community and the doors open at 10, but we tell the congregants, you want to get to the food pantry, get there at 8. so you can get first dibs. No, it has to be something that's open to the community, not reserved for the congregation or any special benefit to the congregation. It has to be, so that's very important. Now, what a lot of congregations do is that they form nonprofits and can be affiliated with a religious organization, but are separate organizations. So you're inspired by faith to serve, but you're not limiting the people you serve to those individuals who you want to come to church on Sunday, or you're proselytizing, or who have to make any type of religious commitment. And a lot of people ask about that. Well, why do you do that? This is not just to protect the state from the church. It's also to protect the church from the state. So you have the freedom to exercise your religious beliefs. By the same time, you also have an opportunity to serve everyone in the community. I happened to be, just the day before yesterday, I visited a senior center operated by Catholic Charities. And in this senior center, they were telling me, which I thought was great, that they allow time and expression and events and celebrations for all of the faiths of the seniors who live in that building. So they're not saying, well, this is the Catholic Charities, that we're going to show preference to those individuals that are Catholic. They're saying that if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, if you're Buddhist, we will allow that expression here in the senior center because we receive public dollars. It's not reserved just for the congregation. In order to have a nonprofit in New York State, now many people say, oh, do I need a 501c3? The 501c3 is a federal designation of recognizing you as being exempt from paying taxes. The articles of incorporation are what you need in New York State. If you go to the website, if you go to our website, you'll see a link to the Department of State's website. In order to be recognized as a nonprofit, because you can be a nonprofit that's also recognized as a 501c3. So you're recognized in the state and then recognized for tax exemption with the federal government. In New York State, to receive a grant, you have to be recognized as a nonprofit organization within New York State. You file the Articles of Incorporation with the Department of State. Once you file the Articles of Incorporation with the Department of State, you can do the application for the 501c3, and then you can register with the Charities Bureau of the Attorney General's office. But the Charities Bureau of the Attorney General's office, they don't make you wait for your 501c3 letter. They want to be assured that you did apply for it. And then you go through the process of being approved by the Attorney General's office and being recognized in New York State as a nonprofit. That makes sense? It's a little bit of sense. Right, so that's the key. So that's what we do with capacity building. Another thing we do is we travel the state. We can't tell people or to do, you have to make decisions as an organization, but we encourage people to look at forming coalitions. Because you look at this and you say, well, we want to do a youth program, we're going to start a nonprofit. But when you look at everything that goes involved in the process, you may say, well, you know what, we're not ready to start a nonprofit. Because once you start a nonprofit, then you have another area of fiscal compliance outside of the congregation. You have to file what's called a 990, which is annual tax document. When you apply for a grant, you have compliance to make sure you're heeding to what you applied for the grant, and you have fiduciary responsibilities. So the reality is that everyone doesn't have the time to form a nonprofit. So some organizations that, you have the heart to serve and you want to do good work, but you don't want to be burdened by having another organization, you can form a relationship with an organization that can be a fiscal sponsor, meaning that you could work under their nonprofit designation and have things in place where you can apply for grants. And many, I'm not just talking about state grants, but private foundations and other organizations that give money recognize fiscal sponsorship and will have plans where you can apply for a grant as an organization that does not have the tax exemption, but you're working with another organization. So we're encouraging people to look at coalitions, not just because of paperwork, but in terms of disconnected youth. One organization can't do all of the work. We have a program in Rochester that we're working with. The governor has in Rochester an anti-poverty initiative, and the Office of Faith-Based Community Development Services, we're working with a group of pastors. They saw a need for employment in an area that is riddled by gangs and drug use and all types of social ills. So we talked to the Department of Labor that has the Urban Youth Jobs Program. And we told the Department of Labor we're looking to hire 50 young people from this area. The Department of Labor said, we'll work with you, we'll find the employers. The employers in the Urban Youth Jobs Program, they get a tax credit for hiring the young person. So they have an incentive to hire the young person. They hire the young person, but then what we found out, as we talked to employers, we found out that there's a challenge, because the challenge is not just getting the individual the job, the challenge is them keeping the job. I started thinking back when I served in the assembly. We had a summer youth worker, and the summer youth worker came in. This young lady shined. She came in with a smile on her face. She was diligent, she was on time. If she was supposed to leave at 5, she left at 5:15. She answered the phone. You would not know she was from a troubled background. And we said, wow, she's gonna be a star. Then one Monday, she didn't show up for work. We said, oh, maybe she's just running a little bit late. Didn't come the whole day. And then Tuesday came, we didn't see her. By Wednesday, we're calling the Summer Youth Employment Program, and we're saying, well, we haven't seen her, and we don't want her to be kicked out of the program, but we don't know what else to do. Thursday morning, she came in with a smile on her face again. Good morning, how are you doing? Went and sat at her desk, started answering the phone, and we're looking at each other. We called into the room and said, we didn't see you for 3 days. She said, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't feeling well. I was sick. But in her mind, the immediate thing, we're judgmental. We said, oh, you should have fired her. But she never saw anybody get up and go to work in the morning. She didn't see anyone in her building who went to work. So she wasn't socialized to know that you've got to be on time, but if you're not going to show up for work, you've got to call and let somebody know. We call it, you've got to call out sick. You've got to call your supervisor. You've got to put in for time. But this was a thing that's a big thing to us, but no one ever communicated that to her. So then we said to the pastors, we're going to work to find the jobs for the 50 young people, but we need your help. And they said, what do you need us to do? We said, we need mentors for the young people. And they said, no problem, we'll find 50 mentors to mentor them. But then the question came, who's going to train the mentors? Now, before I was in the assembly, I have a certificate in designing mentoring programs for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. But my binder's probably been updated about 10 times since I took the class. So there's relevant information that I may not know. We called Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Rochester. And we said, will you help us? They said, not only will we help you, but we just got a grant for a program to train mentors for faith-based communities. And we were looking for faith-based communities. We said, look no further. We have 50 faith-based communities who are going to provide a mentor each that can work with us. So that's an example of a coalition. Now, many times we want to do it on our own. We have in America, we have this individualism. I'm the Lone Ranger. I don't need any help. I'm going to lift myself up by my bootstraps. Anybody even say, I've never seen bootstraps. What do bootstraps look like? They don't have bootstraps anymore, do they? They have the zippers now. So that was the challenge. That was the challenge. But we have to find ways to serve and to build coalitions. So we're here to serve you. We're here to serve faith communities. This is something that the governor considers the highest priority, to make sure we're doing everything in our power to make sure that faith leaders know about the resources that are available. So again, my name is Karim Camara. Thank you so much for your time and your attention, and we're here to serve you in your respective organizations.
Allowed me to get a good picture taken. Make it look like I'm talking to him in reality. All I'm trying to do is get a good picture. Tell the governor I want a job too. My friends, we're going to take 11 questions, and then that man's going to get something to eat. Again, the shy person, when we hit that 11th question, don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand after that 11th.